Hello. My guest today is Miss Margaret Pereira, a lady with a somewhat unusual job. In fact, probably the best description is a backroom detective. Miss Pereira works for Scotland Yard's forensic laboratory. Miss Pereira, it's a pretty unusual job for a lady to do. How did you get involved in it?
Well, I was looking for a job when I left school, a scientific job, and this particular one happened to offer me more money than the others, so that's how I came to be in it.
So it's sheer accident.
Sheer accident, yes.
But you depend on sort of fairly painstakingly small evidence.
Oh, very much so, yes.
How do you get that? I mean, are detectives trained to understand what the forensic lab needs, or do you have to go out on site, or what?
Well, the detectives are certainly trained on how the laboratory can help them. We also have trained scenes of crime officers who collect evidence from scenes, and at times a forensic scientist will in fact have to go to a scene, particularly, for instance, if one has to interpret the distribution of blood stains, blood splashes in a very violent battering case, something of that nature.
Isn't that rather a gruesome job for a woman to do?
I don't think it's any more gruesome for a woman than it is for a man, and women and men seem to stand up to it equally well.
But if you're actually going out on the scenes of batterings and whatever, have you never been upset by it?
No. I think, of course, one graduates slowly into this. One sees things in the lab and one sees photographs before one sees the real thing, and it's a slow education.
But what do you think is the most gruesome case you've dealt with? I mean, you were telling me about having to fit a bit of skin into someone's leg at one stage.
Yes, I suppose one could regard that as rather gruesome. That was a case of a woman who was battered with a blunt instrument, and the suspect had the weapon in his possession, and on the end was a piece of skin. And I actually took the piece of skin to the mortuary and found that it exactly fitted in a wound on the woman's leg.
And did that get the conviction?
I'm sure it was an important part in the conviction, yes.
What do you think, in all the time you've been at Scotland Yard, is the case you're most proud of having been involved in solving?
Personally, the Bromley murder case, this was a young girl about in 1968, I think, who there were several suspects, but no real evidence against any of them until the things that I found, which were textile fibres, unusual ones, blood groups, blood stains in the suspect's car, blood from the suspect left behind at the scene, carpet fibres in the suspect's car, a multiplicity of different kinds of scientific evidence.
What's the oddest piece of evidence you've ever come up with?
Well, that's a difficult question, but one of the most, well, I thought slightly amusing was a case of rape of a girl who worked in a shaving brush factory, and lo and behold, the defendant had hundreds of badger hairs on his clothing.
Do you think there's ever a chance that the science lab is going to make the detective on the beat obsolete?
No, certainly not. The science lab is a backup to either prove or disprove the detective's suspicions.
Do you ever get involved? I mean, if you're given a piece of evidence and told this is concerning a case of rape or murder or whatever, do you get involved in the whole picture yourself? Do you find yourself following the press reports and seeing how it's going?
Very, very rarely, only if it's a very outstanding case. You must remember we deal with hundreds of cases, and so what other people consider to be something rather unusual is our daily life.
So the case that hits the headlines you might have had 10 minutes, quarter of an hour dealing with before you went on to deal with some evidence from a rather less spectacular case?
Well, we're dealing with both at the same time. In fact, most cases take many, many hours to examine, not 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour.
But you're basically, although you're a scientist, you're also involved in detection. Do you think it would fit you to be a good detective?
I don't think it would be my line at all, no. I wouldn't want to be.
But you must be a very observant lady.
Yes, I think I am an extremely observant person.
Do you find this affects your private life at all?
Well, I think sometimes people wouldn't like to realise some of the things I notice.
What sort of things?
Well, little stains on their clothing or hairs or this type of thing.
Fine. Well, Miss Pereira, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.